Welcome back to the Application Insider channel. Today I've got another student interview for you, the second one I've done. I am loving how these are turning out. I love talking with these students and they've got such valuable insight and perspective to share. So I hope you are finding value in them as well. Today we've got Sarah Barragan. I met Sarah when she joined my personal statement workshop in August 2020 as she was getting ready to apply in the fall 2020 match. And you will hear in this story how a timeline became very important for her in getting her application ready. She did receive a match in fall 2020 to her top choice, and she is currently in her internship. So she's got both the applying to an internship perspective as well as the going through her internship perspective. We talk about both of those pieces in this little interview and conversation. And she's got some really great things to share about making the most of the opportunities that come your way, creating opportunities if you can't just find them sitting on the surface, and how that mindset and that proactive response and approach to things really helped her land where she is and is helping her succeed in her internship. So let's go ahead and see what Sarah's got to say and what she can share with us. Before we meet Sarah, here's a reminder that technology is a fickle friend. We rearranged our positions a couple of times to make sure the Zoom connection was as strong as it could be during our chat. Even so, you may hear some clicks and imperfect audio-visual matching. However, the info Sarah has to share is well worth the watch. All right, welcome everyone to the Application Insider podcast or YouTube channel. I am so excited today to welcome Sarah Barragan to share her experience with us. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. I am so excited to hear from you. Before we kind of jump into your dietetics experience, do you mind just sharing a brief introduction of yourself and if you're comfortable sharing kind of where you're coming from in the world?
I graduated in 2020 last year with my bachelor's degree at the University of Reno, which is located in Nevada. And then I applied shortly after to the internship at the same university.
Awesome. All right. And do you mind sharing what brought you to dietetics, why you chose that as your major and your future career?
Yeah, so actually I was going for a nursing degree, which you'll actually hear is pretty common. And I had to take an introduction to nutrition as a prereq for nursing. And when I took that class, I just absolutely fell in love with it. And I realized, what can I do with this? Can I pursue a nutrition degree? I've never heard of this before, even though I was in a hospital setting as a certified nurse assistant. And after finding some research, I found that the local university actually has a dietetic program. And so I was like, I want to do this because I feel like in my community, there was like a lack of support with these patients that were coming in that all had these chronic diseases that could have been prevented. So that's why I pursued this nutrition route.
Okay, awesome. I think you're right in that it's certainly not uncommon for students to choose dietetics after having first maybe picked one route and then realizing, oh, this is close to that dietetics is really where I want to be, and they can move over that way. So that's awesome. All right, so I know you are currently an intern, but before we jump into your experience in your internship, because I definitely want to hear about that, I do want to also talk about your experience applying to internships and how that process went for you. So really some just basic numbers information. How did you choose which program or programs to apply to? And how many programs what number did you end up applying to?
Okay, so I was originally planning for a spring application, and then I bumped it up to fall. So in the midst of that, I actually outlined my internships by how much it will cost me, trying to make it find the ones that are low as possible. And then I knew that I would have to look into some distance option. So in my region, it's really hard to find a clinical rotation because it's already affiliated with the university in this area. So I knew I would have to possibly go out of state to fulfill that. But if I could find a internship that would actually help me and already fulfill that, then that was what I was more interested in, because I could easily find community rotation here and possibly a food service rotation, but it's that clinical one that I think a lot of people really struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I outlined it, I also wanted to make sure that the purpose or their mission statement was aligned with what I wanted to do as well.
Yeah.
Oh, so then how many I applied for? So I had a list about 5.
Okay.
And then when it came to actually applying for the internship, because I went from spring to fall, I was like, let me just apply to my local one. So I literally only applied to one, which is taboo. No one does that. You're supposed to do, probably 3 or more. And so if I wasn't going to get in, then in spring, I would have applied to the 3 to 5 internships that I had on my list.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you really lucked out that the local university not only had the dietetics program you were interested in, they also had an internship, and they were in the fall match, because there are less programs in the fall match than there are in the spring match. So like, I'm like watching the stars align as you're telling your story, which is great. Because
very true.
when you mentioned that, I remember, because Sarah and I have we worked together on her application, and I remember you originally thinking spring and then doing a pretty quick and time sensitive, I guess. You had less time when you decided to apply in fall.
Yeah, I literally had 6 weeks to do my entire application so that I can apply in fall.
But it came together so nicely, so it must have been meant to be. That's awesome.
Yes.
Okay, so that actually answers my next question. When did you start working on your application? And originally it was months, and then with your match change became weeks. So with that shorter time frame, what was like your technique or approach to just getting through your application and covering all the sections and getting ready to hit submit?
Okay, so I know that my biggest hurdle and struggle was my personal statement letter, which I think a lot of students will agree. Mm-hmm. I had all of this background knowledge, experience, but it's like, how do you put it in a paper, let alone have it less than 1,000 words? And that was very overwhelming for me. And I didn't even know how to even gather my thoughts, let alone. So I actually did your personal statement 1-month workshop. And by the end of the month of August, I would have this completed letter. In the midst, I think the second week, I realized, what am I waiting for? I have done my degree. I have my experience. By writing this letter, I can see that I have all the qualities that, these internships are looking for. So what's holding me back? Well, it was just me holding me back. There's nothing else holding me back. And I'm glad I realized that. And that's what made me go bump it up to September by having everything done in September. But I did it. And I was, once you're determined and your focus is there, it is possible. It is really possible to do it.
Mm-hmm. I think that focus piece is really important. And everyone's kind of side projects, not that DICAS, I don't know, sometimes DICAS feels like the only project in a moment, but everyone also has other things happening in their life. And whether that's classes or work or family obligations or whatever, it is always, like you said, an element of focus. And whether that's removing focus from less important things to prioritize the DICAS internship or the DICAS application, or simply just when I'm working on my application, that's what I'm working on for 30 minutes, 10 minutes,
Mhm.
90 minutes, whatever the
Yeah.
time frame is.
hmm And when you spread it out like that, I think I was doing 2, 3 hours because of my small timeline,
Mhm.
but you can spread it to 30 minutes, an hour every single day. And it's actually good to do that because you can very easily overlook the small details when you're so completely stuck in that moment. It's good to take a step back and then to come back to it, and you have a fresher mind.
Mhm. Yeah, I really like that piece of advice. Sometimes, like, even as much as I know that is the truth, sometimes I'm really bad at applying that myself. Like, step away from this project, whether that's a 20-minute
Mhm.
walk, go get a snack, or even just like sleep on it
Yeah.
and come back tomorrow. That's a really good suggestion to use moving forward.
Mhm.
Um, okay, so you talked a little bit about the personal statement. You also mentioned to me in your application some things you did to gain experience. So getting work and volunteer experience is obviously another part that students are thinking about well ahead of time to make sure that they can either get
Mhm.
variety or quantity. And you had some pretty out of the box ideas I'd love to hear about.
Yeah, so actually on my campus, we have a food pantry. And so utilizing what resources is actually on the campus. And I love that the schedule for volunteering was was on me. So I worked or volunteered in the food pantry, between my classes and utilizing that time that I'm on campus, with volunteering. So it makes it really easy to get that experience. And then secondly, I actually found a job on campus as a sustainability intern. And that is another perspective that I think a lot of students might not search, but sustainability and food waste goes hand in hand. And not only was that internship that I had, but there was also another position with the student council for sustainability. So there is a few options on campus. So utilizing my resources and just kind of thinking out of the box, what can I do besides the usual? I could be a diet clerk, or working on campus is just so wonderful because they know you're going to school, they're willing to work with your schedule, and then you're gaining so much more experience and like real life problems
Mhm.
that's just building you up for your career.
Yeah, awesome. I'm glad you were able to find those opportunities. I'm sure that things like that are available on many campuses. It might be a matter
Mhm.
of doing a little bit of digging or researching or networking to get in touch
Yeah,
with the right person.
that's definitely true. Like, and then that goes into even after I had my degree, I still had time.
Mm.
And what I did is looked at nonprofit organizations around in my area, and there's quite a few. And they were looking for a position. It's called just being a youth advocate, where you're just working with a group of people and just making sure the flow of the day is appropriate. A very easy, honestly, very easy job. But I send them my resume with the intentions that, look, I have a nutrition background. This is what I've done in school, my courses, and I believe that I can, apply my knowledge with you and build this nutrition up. And people have absolutely loved that email, that response, that like, hey, I have my degree, this is what I've learned, I can help you. And usually most people are like, yes, let's do it. I have these ideas, how can I put it forth? And next thing you know, I'm doing education weekly. I'm doing cooking classes with these kids. I'm taking them grocery shopping, just utilizing like these basic knowledge to help them grow and then help them transition from being an adult, because it's 18 to 24 was the population that the nonprofit organization I was working for.
Okay, awesome. So in some respects, you're finding opportunities, and in others, you're like creating them and selling yourself on how you can fill an opportunity or a position that you're like, this place could use someone like me. That's awesome. I love it. Okay, one more question about your application before we move on to hearing about your internship. If you could go back and apply again, like I know no one wants to, but if you could, or if you had to, what advice would you give yourself, or would you even just do anything differently?
The one thing I know I would do differently is just believe in myself and have confidence. It grew as I did my application, just seeing everything that you've done in one outline. You're like, holy cow, that's a lot of things that I've done. And you don't give yourself credit, And so I wish, going back, it's like, have that confidence in yourself and believe that this is something you're going to pursue and it's going to dream. And like you said, the stars will align and everything will work out. And I also, on a second note, I remember stating I wasn't going to give myself the pressure either. I said, if it's going to happen, it will happen. And if it doesn't, I have a backup plan. Like, I'll just keep applying the next time, but add more schools. It's like, what can you do a little bit differently? But definitely believing in myself was huge.
Awesome. I love what you said of even just like before you even plug it all into DICAS or anything, just a quick outline of like, what have I done to get to this point? And then you look at it and you're like, oh, I've been working really hard. Like I didn't know small, feat at this. I've been working hard. And I think that is really key in realizing the work you've put into getting to whatever point you're at, and realizing if you've gotten that far and you've already put that much work into it, you can take the next step and work through that little section as well. I love that.
And this is also the time to not be shy of yourself, like within yourself. You need to put it all out there on the table. And I love how Nicole said, you put it out on the table, they get to decide what they can take from that or what they can take away. I rather had all my cards laid out and then pick from it than to have hold back some information.
Yes, that's a piece of advice I've given lots of people. If you don't put it in your application, it doesn't count simply because no one can look at it. If you put it in your application, you let whoever's reading your application decide, does this count? It's a weird word. Does it count for experience or hours or whatever? But when you put all your cards on the table, you let someone else make the call. And I think that's important. I'm glad that you were able to use that approach in your own application. All right. So let's hear a little bit about your internship. You matched in fall 2020. When did you actually start your rotations?
So because of the COVID happening, it kind of disrupted everyone's life. So originally it was supposed to be for January, but it got pushed back to March. And as it was approaching, I was like, this is really going to happen in March. Because previously the other interns, it was a touch and go for them. And so sure enough, March 1st was my first day doing the internship.
Okay. Which rotation did you start with?
So I actually started with my food service rotation.
Awesome.
And I was actually able to go into the hospital to get that experience. So I am thankful that there is some things that I am able to go into the actual workforce itself. And so for my internship, it's a 6 weeks doing the food service. And I actually had to go to 2 hospitals, and versus the other interns are just 1 hospital. But my experience with that was I saw so many different things that I could pick and choose. What did I like? What did I didn't like? If I had done my own food service, like if I was a manager of a kitchen. So, and then also during that time, the state that I live in was starting to uplift the COVID restrictions. And so I was able to see then that diet techs were able to go to the patient's room and to talk to them. They were doing a room service menu. So that was really interesting to see. Also the impact. I didn't realize the impact of what COVID did for just even buying like ketchup packets, utensils, like they had to get a utensil dispenser so that no one's touching the same utensils. So it was interesting to see that side that, you know, we wouldn't have this experience prior to the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine that a lot of interns are seeing a lot of like troubleshooting happening, like troubleshooting that has never had to be troubleshot before. And it's got to be great to kind of see that perspective of, okay, this is how you work through things that come up unexpectedly and things you never thought of, like, oh yeah, we can't just have them in a bowl or in one of those cups. We need a new way, and we need to figure something out.
Yes.
Okay, and so you started in food service. Are you still in food service, or have you moved to a different rotation?
No, so I moved to a different rotation.
Okay.
So now I'm doing my community rotation. So obviously community was affected by COVID, and I'm doing it remotely. So I am doing both in physical and then staying at home doing it remotely. And so I had 2 rotations. The first one was with their weight management associated with the university.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was a focus with motivational speaking and diabetes. So what I learned from that is that doing it remote, it was actually really interesting to see the patients doing Zoom meetings with my preceptors, and they can show the preceptor, well, this is what's in my pantry right now. This is what's in my fridge. And so they also are gaining a different perspective versus, you know, having them come into the clinic and doing that one-on-one. So a lot of clients were actually like really happy, and it's also convenient to do it through the Zoom.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I had never thought of that. Like, this is the one thing I think of Zoom. It cuts out the commute. But I mean, that's a really good perspective. Someone can be like this is what I just bought at the grocery store, or here's my grocery list and what I have currently in stock. That's awesome. I can see that adding a lot of depth or just nuance to the sessions that you're in with patients or clients, and how that can change the information that you share or how you share. And I'm sure there's pros and cons to both, but it sounds like you've seen a really positive side of that.
Yes, I have. It's just been a great experience to see it. There is flexibility on your part as an intern, because you do have, this is the real world. So, you know, clients could cancel last minute, they can reschedule. So you're getting the real life experience and the flow of the day. So there's days, I remember where I was working from like 8 a.m. to 5:30, staring at my screen and my eyes just like kind of crossing at that point. And then there's days where it's all broken up nicely, you know, and there's times where, yeah, you get that maybe 30-minute lunch, or you get an hour and a half. So it just depends, honestly, how the day is booked out.
Lots of variability. You kind of got to be ready for anything, right? So how is it connecting with your preceptor during a remote rotation and communicating with them, figuring all that out?
So it was interesting because I've done 2 different sites remotely. And so at the first site, I didn't even know what my next day's schedule was until the day before in the evening. And she would send me all these links, you know, till 11 a.m. And then usually at the 11 a.m., she would then tell me how my afternoon would be that same day, and then so forth and so forth. So we constantly, as interns, had our email up 24/7 to make sure we would not miss a single email. And then at my second rotation, it's with WIC. And so we're doing that remotely as well. And so it's just different perspective and different ways of teaching. And they've actually given us our cell phone numbers and their cell phone numbers, yeah, to stay in touch. they texted us, in addition to emailing us. And when my first day, they actually gave me a day-to-day schedule for the 2 weeks. So it was like a complete surprise. I was like, oh, wow, look at that. Like, I actually know attentively what I'm doing and then what assignments and projects I'll be working on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really important for students to know going in that preceptors are humans and they are unique from each other. And so some are, like
Yes.
you said, they're like, I'm going to tell you this morning what we're doing this afternoon, and others have planned it all out. And it's important for an intern to know, I mean, you might already know what your preferred style is, or you might go in and be like, this is, or this is not my preferred style. And it is a matter of, okay, is this something I can adjust or be flexible with for this rotation? I think it's also a matter of, can I use professional communication to make sure we stay on the same page, even if my preceptor and I have different styles? So that's a good perspective to share for interns to just kind of have in the back of their minds as they start going to rotations and working with a lot of different people.
And then also, you want to get in contact with your preceptor at minimum 2 weeks before you actually start that rotation. And that's just giving them a heads up. Yeah, they're humans, like you said, and they have lives. And sometimes things, in the back of our back of their head, as an intern, you're like, this is your entire life. And it's in front of your head. And but what I found the benefits of emailing your preceptor in time is they will give you resources. They will mail it to your physical address of all the different resources they use in the office, or videos, or PDF files to email you to kind of just help you out. And so seeing that in advance has really helped me like fine tune, okay, this is what we're going to be looking at. And then when you actually start doing the preceptor and then the client talking to them, you're able to follow that conversation a lot better.
Nice. And I think the 2-week rule, that's what we suggested in the internship I was director of. So that's a good time frame. So not only does it hopefully get you in touch with people, and if there's resources they can share, give you time for that, but it also shows that you as the intern are taking an active, I am proactive, I am taking charge of this rotation. I'm not just sitting back waiting for someone to tell me what to do. And that in 99% of cases, I'm sure, is the type of intern that people are looking for. There's probably a nuance out there. There's a 1%, but in the most part, preceptors, they are humans. They've got their own stuff to do. They're also obviously involved in their workplace and their responsibilities as a dietitian. So having an intern who is being proactive, willing to open up that communication, or just be the one to put that reminder out there is so helpful for the preceptor.
Yes. And I also learned sometimes your preceptor will not respond in 24 hours or 48. And if you haven't heard by them by the end of the week, resubmit that email and just say, hey, I'd like to follow up. Just making sure that everything is in line for me to start with, this date. And I look forward to meeting you.
Mm-hmm. That's the other benefit of the 2 weeks. You've got some time. If you do it 3 days out, then you're feeling panicked after 24 hours, and even more after 48. But I think give the first email a week, because you never know what's going on. And then it's, like you said, totally okay, dear everyone who's watching or listening, totally okay to resubmit your email, bump it up to the top of their inbox, because stuff happens and who knows what's going on. They'll appreciate that reminder. Okay. I know you're not done with your internship yet, but thinking of what you've done so far, is there anything that you would do differently if you could go back, or that you were consciously this is a change I'm making moving forward to add to your own intern success?
So on that first part, we have weekly meetings that I do with the other interns. And we kind of give an update of what's going on their rotation site, what projects they may be working on. And I kind of found a common theme that when a preceptor tells you to do a project, you take that as a yes, I will do, and not that I'm going to be done with my rotation in 3 days. I don't think I have enough time for this. That is just icing on the cake, those extra projects. Another thing I learned is just because you've done it once doesn't mean you're done. Do it again and do it again. You will learn something different each time. And then lastly, I would suggest is I didn't realize how independent I'd be working. And luckily, I have that. I feel like I already have that kind of built into my program already in my brain that work independently. But you're the one that's going to be initiating these projects these times. Your preceptor, you might not even see every single day. And it's like you're trying to make judgment of how is your day going to be and when should you finish these projects. And you are on your own pretty much to say. And so realizing that and going back, yes, I would still absolutely do this internship and I would do it over again. And with the food service, it was just, I guess, being more conscious that I was going to be independent. I'm going to be doing this. And I recognized that after talking to a dietitian that I knew at the hospital, she said, just take this time and focus on the food service, but also, take this time to really just try to invest as much as you can into it. Food service management is probably one of those least favorite things that interns are looking forward to. But I took every day with just gratitude that I could be there in person, gratitude that I have this opportunity, and then what can I learn from this day? And when you kind of do that reflection every single day, you get more joy out of it, and you definitely get more opportunities. There's times where the kitchen manager at one of the hospital, it wasn't even a dietitian, but I had my preceptor who was the clinical manager. They worked with each other to make sure that I was, doing what I should be doing. But that kitchen manager teaches a whole lot differently. And I realized that I wouldn't have known better either until I got to my second location and my preceptor was a registered dietitian and started making me critical think everything out. And I learned that I appreciate that criticism, that good criticism, because you do want your wheels spinning. This shouldn't be something easy, and it shouldn't be, I'm just here to show up and just get this over with. You try to make the most out of it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. A lot of what you said reminds me of something that I told a few interns, especially when they were in rotations they didn't enjoy, which sometimes was food service. For others, it was another rotation. But really, this is a short time and you're going to get more out of the internship the more you put into it. If you're there to show up and clock in and clock out and do the assignments and then walk away, then you'll get some busy work out of the experience. But if you go in and you say, I'm pretty sure I can say for myself, clinical was the rotation I did not enjoy a lot. But if I just walked in and I was like, I'm going to see the minimum number of patients I can get away with, and I'm going to not learn anything, and I'm going to read the chart and only ever refer to stuff in my pocketbook or my notes and not actually try to learn how it applies, then I would have, I did invest myself. I didn't walk away wanting to be a clinical dietitian, but I walked away with more than if I had just been like, I'm here to do the bare minimum, and that's all that I'm in this for. And hopefully people remember this process of having gone through the DPD program, learning all the information, going through the application process. You've got an RD exam coming up and a whole future ahead of you. This feels like It's significant while you're in it, but over time, there's a lot you can punch into this relatively short amount of time before you get into your career. And you can jump into the things that you really like, and you can ignore the things you don't like. But going in with that opportunity or that mindset of this is an opportunity to learn, even if I don't love this rotation the very most out of all of them, what can I take away from it? What am I investing to get the most out of it that I can? I love that mindset.
Well, this is your future, so what you put in is what you're going to get out. And that's also something that another dietitian said, and I believe that was true, and it kind of clicked to me, and I go, okay, I'm going to make the most out of this. And next thing you know, I'm like enjoying it even more, this rotation, and socializing with the preceptor. And then that build that bond and that relationship with her, so that when I do come back for my clinicals, she already has this mind, okay, Sarah, this is how she worked with me, and she did really well. And I also got advice from her that I probably would have gotten if I didn't put all this work into my projects and with her.
Awesome. So definitely a win-win, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, as we're wrapping up, with every episode of the Application Insider podcast or YouTube channel, I like to share a piece of advice or an action item or something like that that students or interns or whoever, wherever they are in their path, can do today to help their application process just take part in their education, or that they can apply to their career. Do you have something like that, an action item that you could share?
So what I'm thinking is, you can make a difference at your campus. You do not have to wait to be an RD. And I want to make that very clear as can be, because I did make an impact on my campus and continue that in my job. And I know that I will continue that with my internship and in my career as an RD. So you do not have to wait until your career starts to make a difference.
I love that. That's so great. That's such a good mindset, again, to have, that you can contribute now in some way. That's wonderful. Okay, Sarah, thank you again so much for joining me. Is there a place online where people can connect with you?
Yeah, so actually I'm on LinkedIn, and you can use my name, Sarah Barragan.
Okay, awesome. And I will include a direct link to that in the show notes and the caption, so people can connect with you that way and maybe follow you as you finish your internship and get started into your career. That would be awesome to see where you end up.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing a little bit about your experience.
Thank you. So yeah, I wanted to share with you, it's so funny, Nicole. So my LinkedIn profile, how LinkedIn works is amazing, right? You want to build that network up. So this is my internship stopped at the campus as a sustainability intern because of COVID. Everyone, the campus closed down, and then I lost my job. Well, I still made those connections with the people that worked there. And so I actually had like my work anniversary with Eddie House come up, and one of those people, he's the director of operations, messaged me like, hey, congratulations on this. And so I responded, thank you so much. I said, yeah, right now. And I updated him. I was like, yeah, I'm doing my internship right now, and I'll be done in September. And I told my old boss, which is Heidi, and I said, I told her, I could be your guys' campus RD next spring. And then he responded, he's like, why wait for that when you're done in September? And I told him like the process of it. And he said, email me your resume, a summary of the courses you're doing, and any certifications you have. And I said, okay. So I will do that. So I sent it to him in the morning. And then later that day, he said, okay, there's going to be a job posting. It's called Wellness Coordinator. And I want you to apply for it by the end of this weekend. And this is what you'll be doing. And it'll be a great transition to make you a registered dietitian the following year for our dining, because our dining hall got blown up, like literally.
Wow.
And so like it literally blew up. It literally blew up. Um, so he's like, when we reopen our dining hall next year, then you can be transition into a registered dietitian. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, this is what Lincoln's supposed to do,
For
is like
real.
help you network, find jobs, and that he looked at my resume to make sure that I could qualify for this position, right? Like as if I was to do it right now. And then he has the expectations that I can't do it, like I won't be able to start tomorrow, but he knows and he's willing to wait for me to be done with my school.
That is awesome. I mean, that is literally like a LinkedIn commercial story. That is so cool. It shows, I think it really shows the value that you have treated those connections. Like you've treated them as valuable connections and worth maintaining. And those are the types of people that people want to work with. And they do create positions or hold positions or like
Yeah.
give you a heads up about positions. Though, I mean, that's really how you do it. That's awesome that it's worked out for you. Do you mind if I share that as like an after the interview thing?
Yeah, yeah, you could totally share that.
That's perfect. I mean,
I just
I
have,
love that.
well,
Okay.
yeah, and I think, people as intern, like I'm not even done till September. I just, that's what 4 or 5 months from now, and but it's like keeping those doors open
Mhm.
is huge, and and that's what I'm saying, like, and that's where that out of the box thinking really comes into play, because I wasn't looking at positions that were already open, or I know it's going to open as an RD, but it's like, what other way can this happen? And I remember when I sent that message, I was like, let me just be up in front with him. I want a job and you should offer me this position. And I'm going to tell you why.
I love it. And that's so funny because that's for me, I'm a pretty passive person. That sounds almost like for me, jumping to that feels really aggressive, but it's not. It's actually being assertive and just being like, I know my worth. I know what I can offer. I know what I've done. And then having the real, like, I don't know if you actually thought this, but what came through my head is the worst they can do is say no and just realizing, like, that's the worst that can happen. I send an email. I spend a few minutes crafting this email, thinking about what I can offer to this place. The worst they can say is, no thanks. And like, what
Mhm.
are you out? You're out nothing. 20 minutes.
Yeah. And I didn't think he was going to respond for a few days, maybe a few weeks, because that's just usually how it goes.
Uh-huh.
He responded within 12 hours. Like I sent that email or the message with him around 8 a.m. And then by 9 p.m., yeah. So by 9 p.m., he's like, yep, here you go.
You've got people watching, just like waiting to work with you. That's so fantastic. I love it. Wasn't that awesome? Doesn't Sarah have so much, like so many pieces of wisdom to share? I really loved chatting with Sarah and hearing again about the process and her approach and mindset to going through her dietetic internship application, how things came together, and her willingness that if it didn't come together the way that it did, she was totally fine with her backup plan anyway. But it did turn out the way she, probably better than she even could have hoped. She's now an intern. And I loved what she had to say about what she's learning in both remote and in-person rotations that she is participating in, her experience in working with different kinds of preceptors, and the things that she's got coming up for her in the future as she continues to move forward. So a few links were mentioned, or a few things were mentioned that I've got links for in the caption. The first is the personal statement workshop. It's the same workshop that Sarah went through. I've got some more coming up soon. So you can follow the link in the caption to either join the waitlist or register, depending on when you actually hit that link. You'll get the information you need. And then I've also got a link to Sarah's LinkedIn, so you can connect with her that way. Like she mentioned, there are some really valuable things that you can do on LinkedIn that could help you as you move into your career and get ready for your own dietetics future. So connect with Sarah that way if you would like. And if not, just make sure that you are using LinkedIn as a networking space and looking for those opportunities to connect with others who you can have a beneficial relationship from. You can learn from them, they can learn from you, and you can use those opportunities as you move forward into your dietetics career. So thank you again, Sarah, for sharing your experience and your perspective. And with this insider insight, you are sure to stand out.